Welcome back to another episode of Geekorama, a podcast by geeks for geeks. We are produced by superherofiction.com, where real fans hit subscribe. We are your hosts.
I'm Jeremy Flagg, creator of the Children of Notre Dame universe.
And I am T.L. Heinrich, creator of the Vigilantes superhero universe.
So for this week, we are going to be discussing the things that you can be reading to tide you over until Wonder Woman comes out. Because as we have just learned, it got pushed back again.
Mm-hmm.
It's
did
not
indeed.
quite as bad as New Mutants, but it's getting there. But before we get started on that, how about we do a little pop culture trivia?
All right, so this month, July 1965, Wonder Girl Donna Troy premiered. Now, or had her her not solo run necessarily, but she had her first appearance as kind of separate from Diana, a separate entity from Diana Prince. The thing about Donna Troy is her origins are really all over the place. So originally, there was a bit of confusion about this character because in an effort to make Wonder Woman more palatable after the publication of Seduction of the Innocent, they did a series of impossible tales showing Wonder Woman as a child, and that child was called Wonder Girl. And then in July of 1961, in a Wonder Woman comic, Wonder Girl is referred to as a separate person from Diana. It's just a reference in a couple of panels, and that's it. Then the first time Wonder Girl appeared as separate, like completely separate from Wonder Woman, was in The Brave and the Bold #6, 1965, July. And she's most commonly connected with the Teen Titans. She is considered a founding member of the team. Her most iconic iteration has to be the George Perez, Marv Wolfman run on Teen Titans. It is not only her most iconic iteration, it is the most iconic iteration of the Teen Titans. And this was in the 1980s. Donna Troy has a absolute slew, a gaggle even, of weird retconned origins, including, this one is my personal problematic favorite, a magically brought to life reflection of Diana, so she could have an age-appropriate playmate. So if you ever had that nightmare of your reflection coming to life and stepping out of the mirror, that's basically this. She also has an origin where she was a golem that was brought to life by Wally West's incomplete memories of her from previous past lives. And then in this iteration, she was forced to relive all of her previous lives, because why not? And there's also a retconned origin where she was resurrected by the Titans of Myth, so she could be exploited as an anomaly that existed prior to the Crisis on Infinite Earths comic. Yeah, it's all over the place. I would suggest, if you're really curious about Wonder Girl, especially after perhaps watching the Titans television show on the DC app, you must get the Teen Titans run by George Perez and Marv Wolfman. That is probably the best version of Donna Troy. I don't want to say the most pure, but it's probably the one most people are thinking of when they think of Wonder Girl.
Is she in the second season of Titans?
I don't know. I actually watched the first couple episodes and I was way turned off. I was like, I wanted Robin, not Batman.
I basically, the moment when he's like, fuck Batman, I was like, sold. I agree.
Well, I agree with that, but I'm like, but Robin was always so different from Batman. And the way they had him, it was almost like angsty,
oh yeah,
like 20-something Batman. And I'm like, that's not what I signed up for.
He's basically Arrowverse Nightwing.
Yes, that is exactly what he is. And that, I liked their version of Starfire. I thought she was delightful.
Oh yeah.
But
I'm still, I need to watch the second season of it. I liked it more than I wanted to.
I didn't get very far into it. But anyway, I might give it a go, like if I run out of things to watch. So what are you geeking out about?
Geeking out. I'm going to put this in the show notes because I think it's super awesome. Of course, I've been talking about Age of X and Powers of X. No, House of X and Powers of X, which is the reboot of X-Men, which is just a clusterfuck of weird. And I'm 6 months behind because I'm using the Marvel app. So I've already... I went looking and found out one of the series has been canceled. A couple new ones will be coming out. But I'm happy that they're being canceled early enough that they're being called limited runs. So the stories wrap up. So,
oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So there's one called Fallen Angels, which is Psylocke, not Betsy Braddock, because they've been separated.
Oh.
Yeah, it's super angsty. But it's a little all over the place, and it kind of doesn't know what it's doing. So, but I'm just happy that it's getting to a conclusion and then move on to other things. But the thing that I love so much about this is Hickman, who is the creative mind behind this process right now. When he went to go make House and Powers of X, he hired a graphic designer to do all the design work inside the book. And when I say design work, I don't mean like fonts or just lining. No, they created a language. There's a whole slew of type treatments. It's everything.
Wow.
Well, come to find out, it's done by a company called Hello Mueller. I think it's Mueller or Muller, one or the other. And come to find out, Mueller has actually been doing comic books for years.
Really?
And some of the things that he has done, it's just so many things that you're going to be like, oh, I knew that. So he did all the graphic design work for Bloodshot, which the show that just came out with Vin Diesel. I think it was Vin Diesel.
Oh, wow.
One of those people. So he did all the typography and design work for that. And then he also did for Hive Mind. He did 2000 AD. He's also done logo work for Heroes in Crisis, Eternity Girl, American Carnage, Robin, Suicide Squad, Unfollow, Survivors Club, and Constantine.
Holy crap!
Along with, it keeps going, Exo Man of War, The Weatherman, The New World, Days of Hate, Drifter, Versus, Motor Crush. Hold on, I'm still scrolling.
There's more.
It keeps going. And so as a graphic design person, once upon a time when I was in design school, everyone was like, I want to be the new David Carson. And the new David Carson was 1980s. So David Carson is old and done with and very important and should study him. But he didn't bring anything new to the table 20 years later. Well, I feel the same way about Hello Mueller as I do about David Carson back then. Okay. So this is a whole new line of very art-focused, very design-focused graphic novels. And I'll tell you right now, I have literally made every artist I know watch the video that he did showing his work. It is... it's amazing. So I am taking notes, and I want to go work for his company. But yeah, so we have graphic design and we have comics, and I found something that brings the two of them together, and we have found Geek Nirvana.
Yeah. So, you are a happy little camper.
You have no idea. Like, my whole life is happy right now. So what about you?
Well, I've been watching Warrior Nun for the past week. And by the way, people, I might slip in some spoilers. So if you really don't want any spoilers, just skip ahead to the deep dive. You've been warned. I finished it last night, and everybody, I had stayed away from articles as much as I could, but everybody and their mother was freaking talking about the cliffhanger. And I'm sorry, there are cliffhangers, and then there's the shit they did. And the shit they did is heinous.
That's not a cliffhanger. That's same thing for Titans. Instead of giving you the last episode of the season, we're going to make it episode 1 of season 2.
Exactly. I don't, you have a series, and I get if you leave some plot threads dangling so that you can come back to them in the next season or the next book if it's a book series. I totally appreciate that, but you do need some kind of wrap up. And my husband, Dan, said, if they had just ended with the nuns there together, saying in this life or the next, and they zoom in on them and then it's over. Okay, great. But they didn't do that. They ended with one of the nuns being overwhelmed by demon-possessed mob. And to me, that is the biggest middle finger you could ever give your viewers, ever.
It should have ended about 5 minutes before.
Yes.
When they're walking away, and then the camera just slowly pans over, and you see him walking out.
Exactly. End. Perfect. Wonderful.
The closest thing I can imagine to this is that scene in Endgame where Doctor Strange starts opening portals. To be continued.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That is exactly it. And Endgame, I would say Endgame ended on a cliffhanger, right? But there was a resolution of sorts. It was a good stopping point.
And it gave you the prologue of the next chapter.
Exactly, which is what you should do when you have a series of movies or books or a television show or whatever. But this was so heavy-handed and ham-fisted and fucking ridiculous, if I could just say it. It was the worst. And for a show that I genuinely enjoyed, there is so much there to geek out about. The women in this show, the representation in this show, I will get to that stuff, but I just had to gripe right up front about how they ended it, especially when you're talking about Netflix, who has the world's worst reputation for canceling shows. I mean, I used to think sci-fi was bad. Yeah, exactly. Like sci-fi used to have that reputation because of the way they ended Farscape. Netflix has far surpassed the Sci-Fi Channel. So now that that's out of the way, I do want to say that the writing, the acting, the directing, the design, down the line, this is an incredible show. There is some gore, so if you're squeamish, just pass this one up maybe. Personally, I don't mind a good blood splatter. It's kind of, it's cool.
And for the fact that they're nuns, there wasn't a lot of religion.
No, there wasn't, except for you couldn't swear in the chapel. And I was like, really? That's what we're going with? Oh, okay, fine. But so for those of you that don't know, really quick rundown, Warrior Nun, it's this magical halo and it's passed down from different nun to different nun. And it's this warrior women who are nuns, and they're the Order of the Cruciform Sword. And since the Crusades, they have fought evil in the world and beaten back the hordes of hell. I mean, that's the very basic rundown of the mythology. And at the very beginning, there's an attack, and the woman that has the sacred halo has died. And they have to hide the halo to keep it out of the hands of evil, so they put it in a cadaver. Well, it brings the cadaver back to life. And you find out it's this girl who's been a quadriplegic since she was 7. The Catholic orphanage that she had grown up in, the Mother Superior there murdered her for various awful reasons.
It gets dark.
It gets so dark, right? And I turned to my husband, who was raised Catholic. I was like, you do know that there's a lot of parts of your religion that are creepy, right? I was like, statues, for instance. I was like, that's kind of creepy. He's like, no, they're totally creepy. He's I agree with you.
When the statue's crying and she looks up and it's just a water runoff.
Yeah. I love that moment. She's like, oh yeah, of course. But the halo is in an unbeliever. She doesn't believe in God, and she has the use of her limbs for the first time since she was 7. So she does what any 20-something or like 17, actually. She's a teenager. Any
Yeah.
17-year-old who hasn't been able to walk or move for 10 years does. She runs around. She steals shit. She gets involved with some grifters. She falls in love. She has sex. She drinks. She sneaks into parties she's not supposed to. I mean, it's delightful. And then there's demons.
Oh,
and the supporting cast is fantastic. These women that are nuns, a couple of them, this is their first acting credit on IMDb, and it is incredible. The group of grifters that the new warrior nun Ava gets involved with, there's a transgender woman in it. And the subject is kind of brought up in the sense of, like, you're talking about fashion, and Ava's like, I was never able to choose my own clothes. I don't know how to do this. And she's like, well, I had that problem for a little while, but you learn, you know, and that's as much as they talked about it. And one of them is a lesbian, and she has this beautiful moment with Ava. One of the nuns is a lesbian, and she has this beautiful moment with Ava talking about what it's like, that the place that's home for you, the place that's your family, it teaches you to hate this part of yourself. The part that should be full of love, that should be an expression of love, is instead full of pain because they've taught you to hate that part of yourself. She never says, I'm gay, like that. It's never like that. It's more about talking about the pain of being in a position where you're taught to hate a significant part of yourself.
And for as deep and dark as this show can get, the lead actress who plays Ava is so oblivious or so sarcastic.
Yeah.
Every time you get these super like deep moments and you're like, tears, she's just like, what?
Yeah, I know. It's very Buffy. It's got a very Buffy feel. There's a pseudo Giles character that broke my fucking heart at the end of the last episode because I knew it. Big spoiler, I knew he was evil. And then they bring the Cardinal in, who's so mustache twirly bad guy, and then they flip it on you at the last second. It was brilliantly done, but I was like, fuck, no. It's a great show. It's a great show. If you listen to this and you didn't mind the spoilers, go watch it. But just know that end of this season is a gut punch. Just be aware.
And I hate Netflix because
I do, yeah.
It would be one thing, I watched it and then I went and looked to see if it's been renewed, and there's no notice yet. So don't do that if you haven't booked a second season.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it is the equivalent of ripping out the last chapter of every book.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And Dan, my husband, he brought up a point. He's like, that's not an episode ending. That's a commercial break.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And if it was a mid-season break, I would have been irked, but I would have suffered. And
exactly. Exactly.
But no resolution. This is how we get 1-star reviews.
Exactly. As authors, and honestly, authors that do that shit, they deserve it.
So, what should people be reading for Wonder Woman?
So this was harder than I thought it was going to be, and part of that reason is because there's not a lot of really great stuff for Cheetah, who is one of the villains, played by Kristen Wiig. And Pablo Pascal is playing Max Lord. And I thought, okay, well, I'll look at Max Lord too. But Max Lord's origins and like character arcs in the DC universe are so convoluted. They are deeply entrenched in a bunch of huge crossovers, starting with Crisis on Infinite Earths. And I was not about to sift through all that. So I'm going to start with a quick overview of Max Lord. And I highly encourage you, if you're curious about this character, start with Wikipedia, because they do have some great suggestions about comics. Check out the DC website, because they also have some really good ones. And if you really are up for the challenge, now that we know that Wonder Woman 1984 has a fall 2020 release date, they can't even give us a month and a date at this point.
Just read all of Wonder Woman then.
Yeah. You could actually start with Crisis on Infinite Earths to know Max Lord and probably read everything and before the movie comes out. So this is a quick rundown of him. He starts off as a plucky, businessman during the Crisis on Infinite Earths mega crossover event. Post-Crisis, he realizes that the world needs heroes and the Justice League is kind of decimated by the Crisis event. And so he goes to work putting together a super team. And whether this was planned or whether the title got handed off to somebody and they just decided to do this, which is a distinct possibility, you find out that he's not a good guy. He's not being benevolent. He's actually being malevolent. Wahaha. And he's doing this for his own nefarious purposes. And of course, all hell breaks loose. He's actually kind of, the way I like to think of Max Lord is the poor man's Lex Luthor. Because he's basically Lex Luthor without the finesse, if that's how you want to think of him.
Okay.
He's canonically now a villain, but he started off as a very weak hero kind of figure. He was portrayed in both Smallville and Supergirl, and I don't remember him in Smallville at all, but I actually did like him in the first season of Supergirl. I thought he was a really interesting character. He is making his big screen debut in Wonder Woman 1984, and I've seen a couple of breakdowns of the trailer that looks like he has something called the Cosmic Shard, and it's a wish fulfillment, kind of like mind control device. And so and he was connected with this in the comics briefly. I'm not exactly sure where. So the supposition is that Max Lord is going to take control of the Cosmic Shard for world domination purposes, and possibly is going to trick Kristen Wiig into working with him and turn her into the Cheetah, which I will get into how that kind of lines up with the current iteration in a moment. It's also how a lot of people are thinking that Steve Trevor is back, that Steve Trevor in this movie is actually more of a mirage than an actual person, which, take my heart out and stab it, that would be freaking brutal, but it really makes a lot of sense. So that's Max Lord. Like I said, start with Crisis on Infinite Earths if you're really wanting to just dig deep into this character and then knock yourself out. I think the DC app has some recommendations for Max Lord comics if you want to get into that.
I have to admit, I'm a little bit leery about 1984 because of the smoke and mirrors around the trailer so far.
Yeah.
There is literally a split-second shot of Kristen Wiig as Cheetah.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, I know some trailers come out before the CGI and whatnot is all finished, which I'm perfectly fine with. But DC has kind of a track record of screwing shit up.
Yeah.
And I mean, Wonder Woman's fine. I mean, she could read the directions off stereo instructions for all I care. And but if she doesn't have a good someone to fight against,
mm-hmm.
then it's a love story with a dead dude. And
yeah. Max Lord with the Cosmic Shard, it will be formidable. And then Cheetah is one of the most classic Wonder Woman villains, but she's also been incredibly hard to pull off because, and this might be the best place to start talking about her origins. Originally, she was a thief in a cheetah costume, a thief and a terrorist. There were some terrorist underpinnings. Her niece was brainwashed at one point into becoming the cheetah. That was her original iteration. But then in the 1980s, George Perez gave it a more mystical kind of origin. And that is the first one that I will recommend. George Perez in the 80s was like a god in DC, honestly. And if you want to read a little bit, I would start Wonder Woman #8 and Wonder Woman #9 by George Perez. Deals with the cheetah. And in this iteration, this is the beginning of the iteration we're getting in Wonder Woman 1984. Dr. Barbara Minerva. And Dr. Minerva is an archaeologist, and she is obsessed with other cultures. Now, in the George Perez run, Barbara was had a bum leg, and she was very into the occult and mysticism around the worship of cheetah. And so in the comic, she goes through this mystical ceremony where she is transformed into the cheetah, somebody that hungers after blood and human flesh. And for whatever reason, she needs Wonder Woman's lasso. She believes that the lasso will give her access to the Olympian gods. And this is and it will give her power. And so this in the George, it's very like thin, honestly, and she's beaten very quickly in the comic, in the George Perez run. But since that comic is set in the 80s and the movie is set in the 80s, if you want to start to get a feel, I would pick that up. Now, in the trailer, Kristen Wiig's character does look kind of like dopey, like, oh, you know, and then there's a shot of her like looking va-va-voom stepping out of a car. So the supposition is that her transformation into the cheetah is more sensual than animalistic.
Mm-hmm.
However, they just 2 days ago released 1 or 2 shots, like promotional shots of her as cheetah, and it's very Chitara from the Thundercats.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, very sexy. There is a sexy aspect to it, like there has been a lot with the modern iterations of cheetah, but she does look animalistic. So I'm not really sure how they're going to take this. Then you've got some, you know, silly iterations of her still being mystical, but like more like Katara in the original She-Ra, which that had to like punctuate everything with a kind of a thing. Don't know why they did that.
Wow.
Then
it really does look like a cheetah.
She does. She looks like a cheetah. It's very well done, actually. If they can pull that off, I would be really happy.
I'm kind of excited. For me, one of the things that I just like about fight scenes is when you have the strong versus the fast.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise it's just Thor. Granted, Thor Ragnarok brought humor into it, but otherwise it would have just been Thor and Hulk punching each other, and you're like, okay, here's 2 big beefy dudes punching each other.
I know. Yeah, I'm excited to see how they choreograph the fight scenes here, because Cheetah is incredibly fast, and that has always been, ever since they brought the mysticism into it, where she literally has changed into a cheetah, that has really been her ace in the hole, is how fast that she can be. And her claws are strong enough to actually wound Wonder Woman, which there's not very many things on the planet that can. The next thing I would suggest, and because they have said, the people that wrote, the writers of the script and the producers have said they have taken inspiration from this, is the 2016 Wonder Woman run by Greg Rucka. This was kind of his return to writing Wonder Woman. Everybody was very excited. It's the Rebirth series is what it's called. And I had to kind of hunt a little bit, because this series goes back and forth in time, which was a little confusing. But so it's going to be Wonder Woman by Greg Rucka, and you're looking for the 2016 Rebirth run. And it's Wonder Woman number 3, number 5, number 7, and number 8.
Wow, that's even worse than X-Men numbering.
Well, because they go back and forth. So those are the ones that actually are part of, like, in between that, they go take you back to Paradise Island, and they take you back here, and they take you back there. And so it's this very back and forth kind of storytelling that does end up culminating, like the 2 timelines end up meeting in the last issue. But I'm just giving you the ones that really deal with Cheetah.
And they did that because of Rebirth, and they had to basically retcon a universe. So they wanted you to know the origin plus the current. Like, it makes sense for what they were doing. Just, wow, that's a lot of reading for a short story.
Yeah, it really is. It's fascinating, though, because so in the George Perez one, there's this reference to this really weird plant. And it's the plant eats blood. So like Barbara Minerva donates her, like has this ritual where her veins are cut. And this little guy, this little African priest, and I don't know any other way to describe it. There are some racial issues here with that one in particular. But anyway, he takes her blood and he mixes it with something, and then he feeds it to this plant. And then he takes the berries from the plant, mixes it with her blood, and makes her drink it. And I never understood what was the deal with the plant. Well, Greg Rucka is going to tell us what the deal with the plant is. So it becomes this huge god-like character, and I'm going to find, let me see, the pronunciation I'm going to butcher, but it's the plant god Urzkartaga. And this, the plant is fueled by hatred and jealousy.
As plants are.
As plants are. This one doesn't run on sunshine, let me tell you. And so in the Greg Rucka comic, there's this whole thing about like Steve Trevor's there with a group of like commandos that are trying to help villages that are being ravaged by beast men. Barbara Minerva is an archaeologist who has been looking all of her life for proof of the Amazons. And there's just fantastic. It's my favorite issue actually of the Greg Rucka run. It's all about her. It's all her backstory. It's her work was stolen. She was disbelieved. Even though time and time again, she found proof of the Amazons, nobody would believe her. And so it really drives her to do some very drastic things to prove I know what the fuck I'm talking about. And she trusts the wrong people, honestly. She does become really good friends with Diana. She becomes, I believe this is the run where her and Etta Candy get together. They are a couple. But because of her ambition, she trusts the wrong person and ends up getting cursed with being Cheetah. And this version is way more feral than the George Perez one. She is literally running around the jungle, eating the flesh of animals and men. She tells Diana it's a burning hunger inside of her. She can't resist. And Diana's like, you have to. And Diana believes that Barbara can help her reconnect. Like there's a problem with the Olympian gods and Themyscira. I don't understand the whole thing. But she needs help from Barbara. And Barbara's like, okay, fine, but you have to help me break this curse. And they say, okay. So they go, they find the giant plant god who is about to consume Steve Trevor and use his body as an avatar for world domination, as evil plant gods do. And so what's revealed in this one, and it's really, it's very Wonder Woman, is that these women have been lied to. They've been conned into believing that they have to serve this plant god, when in reality, the women and the cheetah in particular were the guardians to contain this plant god, to keep the plant god from escaping and wreaking havoc on the world. And so when Diana realizes this, she convinces Cheetah to work together with the women that have been kept prison here, with the people worshiping the plant god. Using the lasso of truth, they break the plant god's power, and the curse on Barbara is broken. I know.
Comics.
It is so convoluted. But I'm reading this and I'm like, this is such a good story. And I'm like, I don't even understand what the deal is. Like, there's a whole Dr. Psycho subplot going on. And something is happening with the Olympian gods. And I could honestly care less. I want more Cheetah and Wonder Woman because the two of them together are so cool.
Well, and I have a sneaking suspicion that what we're going to get is we're going to get Wonder Woman Cheetah confrontation. Cheetah comes to senses, going to be a little bit of a team up, defeat Lord.
That's what I think too. Honestly.
It feels very Wonder Woman to partner with another woman to defeat the evil dude. Like, let's be honest that Wonder Woman is very a pro-female storyline, and
Yeah.
with Patty Jenkins at the helm, I just feel like that feels like if it happens, I'll go, okay, I'm comfortable with that. If it doesn't happen, it'll subvert my expectations, I guess.
Yeah, me too. And to be fair, in the Greg Rucka run, Barbara is freed momentarily from the curse of the cheetah and then has to take that up again in order to protect Etta, I think is how it goes. So she's never really freed from the cheetah, which is really tragic and sad. And so there are some theories that Diana might help her kind of break free. And then in a moment of self-sacrifice, Kristen Wiig will succumb to it somehow. I mean, people are speculating because they've said they've used this particular version of Cheetah as inspiration for the movie. So it'll be interesting to see what they draw from it.
I hope that's what happens, though, is that they draw from the story and run with it. I think that's been what their biggest successes are. Get the ethos,
yes,
and make the movie, not
exactly
get the script and try and wedge it into the ethos.
Exactly.
It'll be hard pressed to find moments in this one. I'm almost wondering if some of the heart of the story is going to be replaced with that sense of nostalgia that like, Stranger Things does a really good job of writing your nostalgia plus that, childlike wonder. So it's a hard balance, I would think.
It is, yeah.
Like season 3 of Stranger Things is all nostalgia, no heart. I mean, I loved it, but the balance was off.
Yeah, agreed. It was a little bit off. Yeah.
But, there was a giant plant-like thing in that too.
I know. I honestly hope they leave that out because I was like, okay, wow, seriously? This is a little weird.
Save that for Suicide Squad 2.
Yeah, exactly. We haven't heard hide nor hair of it. So the assumption is that it's all around the cosmic shard, which I can't say without giggling a little because the 12-year-old in me is like, shard. I don't know why.
And especially coming off the heels of the cosmic gems.
Yeah. Or you know what, in Stargirl, it used to be the cosmic rod. And I was like, oh my God.
Oh
now
my God.
In the show it's the cosmic staff, which is way better than rod, honestly. But yeah, I laughed so hard when Dan first told me about that. He's like, what? That's what it's called. I was like, okay, honey. All right.
Yeah, we're apparently just a bunch of 5-year-olds.
Yeah, totally. Anyway, so there's also some great like the Wonder Woman film you can find on Amazon. It's an animated Wonder Woman film starring Kerry Russell and Nathan Fillion. It's PG-13. Please do not watch this with your children like I did and completely and utterly traumatized them. It's not for kids. Not for kids.
What do you want the question of the week to be?
I guess, what do you hope to see in Wonder Woman 1984? What do you want? What do you don't want? Like, tell us both. I feel like there's a lot of expectations, hopes, and fears riding on this movie. And
I have a feel that no matter how good it is, there are so few where sequel is better than the original. So
yeah,
my expectations are pretty low. As long as I get some killer 80s soundtrack and that's really all I need.
I want some good action scenes. I want some smoochy with Steve Trevor and Wonder Woman. And I want a really good throwdown scene with Cheetah and Wonder Woman. That's what I want. Like, that would make me really happy. Plus, oh my God, that armor. Oh, that armor.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
I have no idea how it's being incorporated. I'm quite excited for that.
I don't even care if it makes sense. I just want it. All right.
All right. So yeah, let us know what you want, what you don't want in the new Wonder Woman. And This might be our shortest show ever.
It might be. There wasn't a whole lot of really good cheetah stories, to be honest with you. So if you have any recommendations.
We'll make the next episode 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly, to make up for it.
Thank you for. Well,
go ahead.
Have a good week, everybody. And
Bye.
We'll see you soon, next week.
Next week. We'll see you soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
To stay up to date with the Geekorama podcast, you can watch our videos on YouTube or subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. And if you enjoy the show, leave us a review or hit the thumbs up button. New episodes are released on Thursdays for podcast listeners and YouTube fans.